What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Payton Collier podcast. My next guest is a fiddle player from Springdale, Arkansas. Known for kicking down doors in the country music industry, is the first woman to ever win or even be nominated for CMA Musician of the Year. She's won it the last 4 years in a row. She toured with Blake Shelton for 10 years. She's recorded and toured with artists like John Party, Martina McBride, Terry Clark, and even Steven Tyler. Check out her original music and her new bluegrass supergroup, Woodbox Heroes, on all streaming platforms. It was an honor and a privilege to sit down with this absolute titan of the country music industry. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Jenee Fleenor. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. Good to see you.
It is great to see you. This is our second time trying to get the podcast going.
Yeah.
We tried it the other day, and it was the windstorm of the century.
I don't know if I've ever witnessed anything quite like that. About got blown off the road when I left here.
We are standing on the second story of Brent Mason's house and watching Brent Mason just open this door and just his hair getting ripped off of his head by this crazy wind here in Nashville, Tennessee. Well, I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. We're going to get in the weeds.
Okay.
It's such an honor to sit across from you. Not only are you a blazing an insane trail for a woman in the country music industry and for a musician and taking musicianship so seriously, but your accomplishments and accolades are unprecedented for somebody in your field of work. How does it feel carrying that weight?
It's very humbling. That award was, you said we were sitting in Brent Mason's house, and 16-year-old me is freaking out, honestly, because those were my heroes. There were women that I looked up to. I guess I never really thought, there's not been a woman that has won the CMAs. So I guess in the back of my mind, I dreamed of that. But I'm thankful for parents that never said, you're a woman, so this might be hard for you. And I've heard those stories, which breaks my heart. Women musicians that have had to go through some crap, and I try to encourage them. But I definitely, it's such an honor to carry that torch, and I hope there are many women that follow in my footsteps. And I talk to a lot of women on Instagram and whatnot, and try to encourage them. And I see a lot of youngsters that now know that being a session musician is something that they can aspire to do, and I think that's awesome. So some days I just don't know what to do with it. I said in my CMA speech this past year that sometimes God gives you so many more blessings than you even know what to do with, and that's kind of where I'm at. I'm just so humbled by it all, to win it one time, and then now this is the fourth. It just blows me away. I sometimes don't know what to do with it, but I'm very, very grateful, and we'll do my best to carry this torch and
and burn everything down with it.
Burn it all down.
Yeah, sawing away. It's in your song "Good Old Girls,"
yes.
which I love.
Thank you.
Says you were fiddling "Faded Love" by the time you were 5 years old.
I was.
I think this is kind of a deep question. Sorry to come out the gate swinging with it, but to have that happen and to be in a position, like for your family to be in a position to get you a fiddle, to be in a place where country music thrives, like in Arkansas. Doesn't it feel kind of like destiny? Like lightning struck you from God or space to hear that song, to have the Bob Wills influence? You're like a perfect storm in that regard. It
does feel like that. I do feel like what I do is a gift from God, and it, I started at 3 playing classical, and it is when I heard Bob Wills on my dad would spin those records, and I'm trying to think, maybe they were cassettes by then. No, I think it was still records. And it was old time fiddle players. Cotton Combs was an old time fiddle player in Arkansas that I remember. I actually went online and found some archives of Cotton Combs. And when I hadn't heard these fiddle tunes in so long. I mean, of course I know these old fiddle tunes, but to hear those same records, and I just started bawling to hear those same sounds. And every time I hear Faded Love, the Bob Wills version, I cry, because it is kind of like a lightning bolt went through me, and I heard it so much, and I just started to play it by ear. And I do believe this is a gift from God, and I probably didn't realize it then. Even my mom said that my teachers had to tell her, said, Jenee's really good. You should keep her in here, playing classical at the time. But she's like, oh, okay. So she just was doing the lessons. She came to every lesson until I was about 12 years old. And they were so good about taking me to all different kinds of fiddle players. In Northwest Arkansas, there's actually a lot of influence. There was old time fiddling, and then there was Western swing. There was a Western swing fiddle player named Frankie Kelly that I would take from. There was a Cajun violin teacher, Ann Vadrine, that I would take from. My mom was from Louisiana, and there were songwriters, kind of a hippy dippy songwriter crowds that I would see. So all these influences, and now being a session player, that's kind of my call, is to be able to play all these different styles of music. So, yeah, I guess it was kind of a perfect storm.
I think too, just the spirit of, you just seem so fun and lighthearted and goofy all the time, in the best way.
Thank you.
I think Western swing, just the free spirit of the and Bob just bouncing around. And I was telling you before we started this, I think one of the best live performances of all time, which you are like, I forgot I even did that or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Is you at Larry's Country Diner playing John Anderson's cover of Mark Knopfler from Dire Straits' song "When It Comes to You," which is just a badass song. Anyway, and you sing it so beautifully, and your violin parts are so great. And you do a little Bob Wills nod there to our buddy Mike Johnson.
Mike Johnson.
One
of my favorite musicians in this town.
But yeah, so I love that performance. And if you haven't seen that, even though we're early on in this conversation, you got to check out Jenee doing Larry's Country Diner singing When It Comes to You. And so tell us the story about you playing with John Anderson, getting to play one of the most legendary fiddle parts ever.
Well, it was Joe Spivey that played. I have to give a nod to Joe because I just love him, and he's been a hero of mine through the years, and he played those Seminole wind parts that we know so well. So John Anderson was on tour with Blake Shelton, and Blake had this tour where Bellamy Brothers, John Anderson, Trace Atkins, and all these people would play during the show. And
a bunch of nobodies.
Yeah. Nobodies. And so John, every night we'd get to play Seminole Wind, and I'd get to step up front, and it was incredible. Like, just because I can still see that video. I watched CMT as a kid, and I can see John in that Indian jacket, that Seminole jacket. And so the wild part, I guess I told this story on the Larry's Country Diner thing, but every night that John, he didn't wear this jacket every night, but every night he would come through the floor in this jacket, just turquoise and that coral color and yellow, and the whole band would look at me because they knew how much I love turquoise, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to find one of these jackets. So after the show, I ran up to John. I'm like, where can I find one of these jackets? Thinking I could just run to Walmart and get one. Well, it turns out you can't. He said, an Indian chief gave it to him. And so he'd wear it again. I'm like, okay, John, you got to tell me how I got to get one of these jackets. And he's like, he'd look at me. He goes, I got one better for you. And I was like, I don't know what he's talking about, but by the end of this tour, I got to see how to get one of these jackets. And so the very last show of that tour, he gathered the band in the band room, and he comes in with this, like I could tell it was something in this wardrobe hanging thing. And then he hands it to me, and I was like, oh my gosh. And my first thought was like, oh my gosh, he had one made for me. And then I unzip it and see that it's his jacket that he wore. And I mean, I just couldn't believe it. And of course we all cried, and it just meant so much to me. And I still wear that jacket. It has its own Instagram account. I haven't kept up with it.
What's the handle?
John Anderson's jacket.
John Anderson's jacket.
Yes.
See, so yeah, Jenee, I don't know if you know this, but people don't get gifts like that. Clearly he thought enough of your playing and just even be able to play Seminole Wind. I mean, what a perfect song.
Oh my gosh.
From the ground up.
It was so fun.
So dialing it back to the early days a little bit here. So you and I are both Arkansans.
Yay.
What's up, Arkansas sister? How old were you when you started to be deemed like a child prodigy?
Oh, Lord.
At least locally.
I don't know. I mean,
Because it's extremely uncommon for someone to develop a work ethic and a discipline, but just a focus at that age. So did you feel when you got the fiddle in your hands and you saw and learning Faded Love by ear, did they bring you like a comfort, or you're just like, you were just so at home? I'm just really trying to get in the headspace of like how because was flicking boogers and, scraping my knee on a skateboard or something, and you're, winning awards.
Well, it was kind of my job. My parents said, you have to practice an hour a day. And maybe my personality or whatever, it was like, okay. Although at 3, I don't think I practiced an hour a day. I do remember them leaving my violin out, and because it was easier if I walked by it, I would just pick it up. And but I do remember I just loved being able to play whatever I could hear. And my classical tapes I would listen to, I guess when I knew I had a good ear, I would hear my mom and teacher talk. And I'm like, I was like, okay, I guess I have a good ear, because they would say, I would come in and say, I would forget like what song 4 would sound like. And my teacher would say, well, she's having trouble with song number 4 in the classical book, Suzuki book. And my mom would realize I would fall asleep by song 4. So she would start the tape at song 4, and then I would fall asleep. And by song 7, I'd have trouble learning that one. So she'd start the tape at song 7. So I was developing my ear so young. And I think just the fun for me in fiddling was always, I could just play what I heard. I knew the classical training, I had to do that. It was kind of like my job, but the fiddling was fun. So I'm just glad that they kept me in all those different things. I think by the time I was 11, I realized that fiddling was going to be my path, and that I was going to move to Nashville someday. When I heard fiddling on country radio and whatnot. But, my friends as a kid, I just remember going to, because I would be jamming with 80-year-olds. Like, that was normal for me on a weekend. And and then my parents would have people come over and jam, and it was always older people. I was always around older people. And my friends, I do remember them coming over like, come on, Jenee, let's go play outside. And I'm like, but this is fun. But they didn't get it because they didn't play.
Jenee, quit constructing a path to fame and success. So did you ever go to the Mountain View Bluegrass Festival? That's serious bluegrass territory.
Yeah.
There.
I think it was the Mountain View old time fiddle contest. I'm pretty sure that fiddle contest, you couldn't do fiddle tunes that were past, like, I don't know, 1940 maybe. I mean, they had to be really old fiddle tunes. So I competed in that a lot. And Harrison, there was a bluegrass festival there. I think they still have that. And in Missouri, a lot of the bluegrass festivals around there, Western swing festivals and all that. It was funny because Mom didn't really want me to play bluegrass. She, I think, heard a lot of bad bluegrass, maybe. She didn't really dig the high, lonesome sound.
So there was a pretty rigid, almost disciplinarian vibe in your household.
Yeah.
So you have to attribute your work ethic and discipline at their age to your parents.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I got to say, I never really loved to practice. It was them. I mean, they weren't beating me or anything, but I just knew that I had to, in order to be better, you had to practice. And she would say things like, well, those little Japanese kids, they practice 3 and 4 hours and you only have to practice it 1 hour. So I was like, oh, well, that's nothing. So I'd go practice my classical music. And I never liked the feeling when I stepped in, with my teacher and I didn't know what I was doing. That was the worst feeling to me, is when I didn't practice and I stepped in there and I was learning a classical piece and I didn't know it because I didn't spend time with it. So I think all that clicked at that time too, was, okay, in order to get better, you have to spend time with your instrument and put in this time. And then I realized that on the fiddle, and when I started doing contests, if I'm not woodshedding in my room, then it's not going to work out when I step on stage.
I know just people from all different backgrounds have their parents, you can be successful or develop a work ethic in all kinds of different ways. With your parents, was it a thing where they wanted to have a kid that was great at something, or they wanted you to be passionate about something, or was that just how they were raised and they were carrying it forth, you know?
I think my parents were both, my dad was retired before I was born, and my mom was retired by the time I was 10. And I think they just, they had a lot of time to spend with me. And I'm grateful for that. My dad passed away when I was 16 or 17. And we spent so much time together every weekend. And, you know, I think it was just a way that we could spend time. And actually my mom started playing piano after I started playing, and then my dad started playing after I did. So I have these beautiful memories of us playing in the living room, you know, mom just kind of figuring out these chords and dad playing a little bit. And I think it brought them a lot of joy. And then, and this whole, I do remember her saying she wanted me to go to Juilliard. And I think she had dreams of me being a classical, you know, violinist, which I was, but I think that's, you know, she could have seen me going to Juilliard. And I was like, Grand Ole Opry is more my path. I mean, my gosh, I lived in Arkansas and I heard all this country music. But it's not like my mom didn't grow up listening to classical music. Her thing was kind of like old rock and roll. And it was really my dad's influence, those old country records
That is so sweet that they they learned instruments to play with you because you were into it.
Yeah.
And also that's very rare for their parents to retire at such a young age for them. Yeah. And so that it seems that them being present played a huge role in your life.
Yep.
Yep. Just a different level of time that you can spend with somebody when you don't have to worry about, you know, the stresses of work and everything. So it's very endearing that they wanted to play with you and they learned a new skill set to make your world bigger. I think that's really sweet.
Yeah. Yeah. And it brings it, it is sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God bless you. God bless your parents too.
I had the best parents.
So by the time you're 11, you know, this is my journey. What was it, of course, other than the sounds and you hearing stuff and learning it by ear, but I think we can probably bond over the appreciation of the spirit of country music. And there just ain't nothing like it. It's kind of like if you don't know, you don't know, but you're not going to look at so was it like, you know, Dolly, was it the Porter Wagner show? What got you just like, where you're like, that's going to be my world, you know?
I mean, I listened to country music. I remember Kix 104 and just that just was the background of my life, was listening to Kix 104. And then, you know, when I had money and could go buy my own CDs, I was buying Ricky Skaggs, Steve Wariner, Vince Gill, Alison Krauss, Jerry Douglas, Sam Bush. You know, I always leaned towards the musicians side of things and people that played instruments. You know, of course, and I remember like, I didn't really even listen to the lyrics. I think I didn't realize that till I moved to town and started working with Larry Cordell, one of the best songwriters in town. And I was like, oh gosh, songs actually have lyrics.
So some people do that. I don't know. I have a great guitar player friend in Indianapolis, and he's just like, I don't listen to the words of the songs. He's like, I'm in it for the notes.
Yeah.
And I always have taken a cerebral approach to it. Just the songs on the radio. I guess you had probably a GAC too.
Oh yeah,
you?
GAC.
I loved using GAC back in the day.
Of course. Well, and of course I loved all the videos, and I actually ran into it's Mark Miller of Sawyer Brown the other day, and I was too scared to say hi because 16-year-old me saw him in that video, like doing the chair thing. I can't even remember what the song.
Turned up her nose as she walked by my Cadillac. Well, I ain't first class, but I ain't white trash. So I watch a little GAC.
There you go. Yeah.
I know.
So yeah, all of that. And then I was playing at VFWs, and I was playing, shuffles and Ray Price. Of course, I listened to all that stuff. And, you know, I remember, well, this is when I was really young, but Willie Nelson, like my treat when I practiced, and my treat would my parents would put Whiskey River on by Willie Nelson, and I got to jump on the bed because that song just it just made me crazy. I loved it, but I didn't know what Whiskey River was.
That song is the best. I love all those like 145 jam turnaround songs that you could just go for days.
Yes.
I think I'll just stay here and drink. Yes. Give me that for 15 minutes. That's what I want. That's so funny. They let you jump on the bed.
Yeah, I'm such a rebel.
Yeah, with a Whiskey River. Yeah, some people were out drowning in a Whiskey River, and you were
jumping on
creating
the bed.
one with the blankets on the bed. So how old were you when you moved to Nashville and decided you were going to make the jump? You got into Belmont from your accomplishments playing thus far, correct?
Yeah. So I mean, just right out of high school, I always knew I was going to move to Nashville and try to make it as a session player. That was my dream. And, kids growing up, they didn't even know what that meant. They knew I was going to move here and be a fiddle player, but to be a session player, I mean, not hardly anybody knew what that meant back home.
Yeah. So how did you latch on to that term? Like, did you know about people like Brent Mason and what they were doing? How did...
The American Music Shop, I remember watching that show, and which had such a killer house band, and Mark O'Connor was I think the band leader for that. Mark was a big influence on me, and that new Nashville Cats record, I bet I listened to that. I mean, I know I wore it out because I had to buy another copy of it, but I would just read those credits and the session players on there, and I'm like, I want to play with Paul Franklin, and I want to play with Brent Mason someday, and I want to play with Matt Rawlings and Michael Rhodes and Eddie Bears. And I didn't know, I guess when I saw that show, it was a face, because a lot of these session guys, I didn't even know what they look like. And I finally got to see what they look like and how they shred their instruments. And also TNN, I guess it was Nashville Now, Wanda Vick played fiddle, and Tommy White. And I just always remember seeing them. And my mom would point out, Wanda was probably one of the first female musicians that I saw on TV. Like playing fiddle and doing all the things. And my mom said, see that girl right there? She plays the heck out of a fiddle, and she smiles to the camera and shows the world she loves it. And that so stood out to me. And I love Wanda. She's just a dear friend now. But her and Tommy would just tear it up on that show. So it was so fun for me as a kid to see that, and to see like Brent winning Musician of the Year on the CMAs, which his wife just posted on his Instagram the other day, and I was like, oh my gosh, I remembered these moments growing up. And
would you look at the records, like if you'd hear a Brooks and Dunn and you'd go look at it and be like, who's on the album?
Yeah, for sure.
So you were hunting down the session dream.
Oh yeah. Or I would listen and test myself and say, okay, do I
That's
know?
Rob.
Yeah.
That's Rob.
Yes, for sure. And I guess I just played these games by myself. I don't know. There was no other kids there to play these games with, but
yeah. Hey, you want to go down the street to Jenee's house and look up who played the fiddle part on Boot Scootin' Boogie? Sounds like a fun time for the kids.
There was none of that. Maybe when I moved to town, I had some friends that we could do that, and it was, oh gosh, I would have moved here, way earlier, but of course I had to go to school. My mom's like, no, you were finishing.
Oh, that's where we were going, getting you back in Belmont.
Yeah.
There. So
yeah, but I ended up going to Belmont, and I got a gig with Larry Cordell like 2 weeks after I moved to town. I totally was not expecting that, but I waltzed in the Station Inn, one of probably my most favorite venue to play in Nashville, besides the Grand Ole Opry. Yeah, and I went in there, and Larry was playing, and me and Josh Matheny and Derek Deakins went, and I didn't know Larry was looking for a fiddle player, but my buddy Brandon Rickman was playing on stage, and I didn't know he moved to Nashville, and he goes, hey, come play for Larry at the break. And I went back there and played some fiddle tunes, and they kept saying, that's the I was like, what does that mean? And Larry called me.
You saying you didn't realize they were complimenting you?
No,
by
I had
saying,
no idea
yeah.
what that's that meant. I'm like, I don't know if I'm playing good or bad.
Mom, I just got to Nashville and Larry Cordell and the guys at the station inn told me I play like the...
No idea. I mean, I was a little sheltered growing up, I guess. And so next thing I know, I'm getting a call to play in a bluegrass band on the road. And I'm sure my mom was freaking out. Like, here she goes on the road. But it was awesome. I remember playing the Opry just a month after, like in Good Old Girls. I kind of tell my story, but
Did you do that with chord?
I did. And it was at the Ryman, my very first time playing the Opry. It was at the Ryman, and actually my mom and them were at Tootsie's. They had tickets to the show, but they didn't realize, and I didn't realize there was 2 portions, or we played 2 shows. So they missed the first one because they were sitting at Tootsie's. And I'm like, did you hear me? And they're like, well, hear what? But they got to catch the second time.
We're at some purple bar.
Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh. But I have that somewhere. I ran across it not too long ago. I think I have it in my email, the archive of that. And oh my gosh, I was scared to death. But my gosh.
So I know how appreciative and sincerely thought, or how much you value at this point in your career, little moments like walking up to, you were scared to say hi to the Sawyer Brown guy.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine your level of excitement and pinch me vibes at that time in your life that you're playing the Opry 3 weeks after moving.
Oh man. I was so scared. I was
shaking in your
shaking
little
in my
boots. Right?
I don't even know if I wore cowboy boots then. That's funny because my style has way changed over the years too. Yeah. But I'm sure I was very nervous, but it was fun. It was fun. Still is.
So you said that Wanda inspired you with the smiling and the playing. That's so important to reveal that you're having a good time to the audience. Yeah. You know, if they see you're having fun, they're going to have fun too. So how do you feel about making sure that you preserve that energy even on days when you're not feeling it?
Oh man. Well, really, if I'm playing the fiddle, my heart is pretty happy.
So you don't have a choice if it's in your hands.
Pretty much. I mean, there's maybe a few times, of course, if your heart's heavy that day, it might be a little harder. But, you know, I think at the times on The Voice and stuff, like, just being able to get that out of you and present it, and a smile. I mean, my gosh, if you're smiling, somebody's going to smile back at you. But to realize that when you're looking at that camera, like you're reaching all these millions of people. And of course that's nerve wracking, but there's some kind of balance and all that you have to like get out of your head a little bit, breathe. I've learned that breathing is, when I'm in those predicaments, breathing's the best thing you can do.
Do you need to do it right now?
Yeah, a little bit. I am a little nervous. I'm way more comfortable fiddling.
Yeah. Yeah. So y'all, without y'all's safety net, so you let me get in your head.
Oh gosh.
You know?
You know, of course, in the session world, it's a lot different. I mean, it's all, I'm not thinking about those things as much. And I always say you have to give up like 10, 15% of your like session playerness when you're, you know, giving it to the camera a little bit more. I just always feel like.
What is that? Focus or?
Well, just like.
Precision?
Maybe your precision.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes I feel like I miss a lot more when I'm hamming it up.
Yeah.
So there's this little
rooting and tooting up there.
Yeah. But there's this kind of give and take. You know, when I was a young classical player, I mean, the videos of me is just like, I didn't have any expression. I should post some of those videos at some point, but
I'd love to see them.
I do remember people coming up and saying, "Girl, you need to smile a little bit more." and I'm like, why are they saying this? And then now when I see that footage, I'm like, but the classical world, you're just like.
So were you like introverted as a kid? Or
I was very shy.
So this is Nashville, Jenee.
I guess so.
That was George.
That was George. Oh my God.
I've been waiting to pull that trigger.
That little bomb.
Are we gonna do it? You gonna tell?
Okay, I mean, yeah. I guess.
I'm gonna have 1 million views by tomorrow night when people are like, "Dude, did you hear?" Okay, Jenee, you're on my podcast today, and you can revoke this later if you want. Okay. But if you would like to tell the truth of your identity, I know our millions of listeners would love to hear it.
Well, I go by my middle name, y'all. Jenee's my middle name, and my first name is kind of George, but not really. If you look at my driver's license, it's Georg. It's all in capital, but it's George.
Each letter is capital?
Yes. But my name, Mom decided it was cool to do capital Georg, capital E.
So
it's Georgie.
Georgie.
But there's no I in it. And then on all official documents in my whole entire life, every roll call, first you sit your butt in your chair, George, and my maiden name. We haven't talked about this.
That's just when you thought we had a haymaker. The 1-2 punch on this one is truly unbelievable. Jenee Fleenor's married name rhymes with your maiden name.
Yeah, which was Keener.
So her name is George Jenee Keener Fleenor.
Oh my gosh, we just did that.
If your mom listens to this, tell her to cover ears, that's just damn hilarious right there.
My dad's name was George. Yeah, thanks, Mom. And I never changed it. I told her I was going to. I said, Mom, this is just wearing me out. Getting called George.
Every substitute teacher.
Yes.
George Keener to the office.
But I'm going to just embrace it. And I'm probably going to do a fiddle record at some point, and it's going to be called A Girl Named George.
We're copywriting that right now. Nobody can steal it because
I'm pretty sure
there's like 5 female fiddle players in general.
And their name's not Georgie.
Yeah. And their name's not George. Man. That's hilarious. So, so kind of get back on track here. I was laughing too hard. So when did you get your first professional session opportunity? And I don't mean like just, in your buddy's garage, like, hey, come play, but like record label, or when you're like, hey, I can't mess this one up. This is a shot.
Well, this is, I guess my first like real session was with Larry Cordell playing on his records. And I always say when I'm at Station West, there's a hallway there that I still record in. So I get these flood of memories, which is so awesome. So I guess that was in the bluegrass world. But as far as like a master recording, probably, so I toured with Terry Clark. That was my first big country gig. And this story, it actually involves Brent, which is fun. So who was on the session was Brent and Paul Franklin and probably Eddie Bears. It was a lot of the A-team. And
the players.
The players, yes.
The players.
And Terry said, I'm going to have you do this session if you would like. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my chance, my one chance in this business if I want to be a session player. And I'm probably 23, 24 years old. So she said it was at Ocean Way, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've heard of Ocean Way, never been there, and so intimidating right off the bat, pulling in there. And she said that the fiddle player that was supposed to be there couldn't make it, and there could be a chance that I could be replaced. And I was like, okay, but my goal, I'm not going to be replaced. So I get in there, and I barely know how to read a chart. I for sure couldn't write one, or have it make any sense. I wouldn't want anybody to read it, but I thought I did pretty good. I just was very intimidating. I mean, these are all my heroes in here, and I'm just hanging on for dear life. But at the end of the day, I felt pretty good. And then fast forward to when the record came out, I was touring with Terry out in California, and my husband was there. And I remember the record came out. We went and got it, and I looked in the credits, and my name wasn't in the credits. And I was like, oh my gosh, I did not make the record. And we went and listened, and I actually did make the record. They kept me on one song, and but they forgot to put my name in there. But I did get replaced. But let me tell you something. That was a lesson I needed to learn. And it's something that happens to all session players. You realize once you've done this enough, you will get replaced, and you will replace somebody. And that's just part of it. But I was absolutely devastated at that time. I thought, I'll never be able to be a session player. This was my one chance, and that's it. But I listened to the record and realized I did not play as good as Stuart Duncan, and I could A/B our parts, and I knew I had a lot of learning left to do. And you can't teach experience. I just needed the experience. So I just went back to the drawing board. I went home and woodshedded and just still kept doing little sessions that I was doing. But that I remember seeing John Huey, the legendary steel player that played on, he toured with Vince Gill when I came to town, and I got to play with him at a lot of steel guitar conventions growing up. And I saw him at the Kroger parking lot in Hendersonville shortly after that, probably the next week. He's like, "Honey, how are you doing?" I said, "Man," I said, I've been kind of depressed this week. I said, "I played on this record and I got replaced." He goes, "Honey, let me tell you something. I've been replaced on this," and he named a slew of country artists. And I just could not believe. This is the legendary John Huey. I could imagine anyone replacing him. And I thought about that so much. And he just gave me a lot of encouragement that day. And so it's just those lessons you learn, and you just kind of have to roll with it. And then, like I said, it's just part of it.
It's also probably at that time was a good lesson in not just putting too much emotional stock in anything you're doing professionally, because you're going to go through all kinds of peaks and valleys, and you kind of have to have some mental fortitude to just, persevere. Because a lot of people, give up at that point. Yeah. And every step along the way, every time that you keep pushing forward, that's where the next guy that doesn't, or the next girl that doesn't become you know, that's where they misstep. So in a weird way, I'm so glad your hopes and dreams were crushed after you did.
Right. Well, it was, like I said, a lesson I needed to learn. And yes, you have to have some tough skin in this business. And I've come across that quite a few times too. And you just, for me, it's keeping in tune with God, and knowing He always has my back.
So after that happened, you said you went back to the woodshed. Did you turn it up to 11? You're like, well, I'm going to saw this thing harder than anybody.
I think it wasn't so much as me like sitting in my room and just practicing like crazy. I was on the road with Terry. Like I had a great gig. I started thinking like, okay, well, what can I do better? I just didn't have experience in the studio. So I finally did. I started songwriting, and then which led to some little demo sessions and whatnot, during that time. And then my husband got me Pro Tools. Honestly, that was a game changer for my birthday.
Thank you, Mr. Fleenor.
Yes. Yeah, that was a game changer. And at first I wanted to throw the dadgum thing out the window.
What computer was it on? Like a Dell?
Oh my gosh.
A Dell, as in the computer, not the singer.
Right. Probably. It probably was. Well, at first he bought me this, is Tascam is that a studio something or other?
The Tascam.
I don't know. But I blew it up because I plugged the wrong.
Oh, like a power supply into it?
Yeah.
You melted the battery.
I melted it.
Dang.
So I don't know what was on there. Probably nothing good. But.
So what, because obviously you probably had access to cassette recorders and stuff like that. So what about Pro Tools was a game changer for you and your approach? I'm thinking your approach to writing parts for songs. Yeah. Correct?
Yeah. And I started songwriting at that time too. So I was actually getting to write with Jerry Salley, and I think Jerry Salley was one of the first songwriters I ever wrote with. Amazing songwriter. And we would do demos. And I said, well, I have a studio. And I finally learned how to not get hurt. How to just get my tracks recorded.
Not melt batteries.
Yes. Yeah. So we would layer track. And then I started to just experiment. Like I would just layer stuff and realize I could do twins and triple fiddles and strings. And then I think songwriters realized that they could send me these tracks and then I could put fiddle on them. And then through my songwriting, that, I really started to dive into songwriting. I didn't I did not know if I'd have a fiddle career in the session world. And I felt God pulling me like to be a songwriter. So I was just, when I'd get in town, I would just be writing with anybody that would write with me. And I learned, you know, you're going to hear the word no a lot in this town as far as pitching songs, writing with people, whatever. Again, the thick skin part. But eventually, one of the first songs I wrote was a song called I Am Strong. And it was for a little girl at our church that was going through childhood cancer. And the Grascals ended up cutting it, and Dolly Parton ended up singing on it. And this whole cast of country stars. And I was like, oh my gosh, it opened up a whole new world to me. I mean, it was so special because we just wrote this for her. I didn't know if anybody would even hear it. And the fact it got cut and nominated for Song of the Year at the IBMAs, and it really lit a fire in me to pursue songwriting. So I thought, okay, well, maybe this is the path I'm supposed to be taking. But still, I mean, I was fiddling every chance I could get, and then fiddling on all these demos that were being sent to me. And then, you know, country radio had changed, and there wasn't a lot of fiddle on it.
No.
I know. It's crazy.
Before we get too far ahead,
yeah.
though, quick pause on that. One, that's incredible that happened to you. How does a song like that you write for your community like that, how does the life of a song go from something you play in church from the bottom of your heart to something that compels you? What you wrote it about, I'm saying. Mm-hmm. And that song making it to Dolly Parton's doorstep. How does that happen?
Well, I wrote it with, I remember stepping in the writing room with Jamie Johnson of the Grascals and his wife, Suzanne, and the St. Jude Telethon was on that day. And as I was headed downtown, I was like, guys, this is so heavy on my heart because I'm watching little Ansley go through this, and the St. Jude Telethon's on. And I said, we have to write a song for these kids. So we just poured our heart out. The simplest little song. But we wrote it within an hour probably at CSAC. And so they were signed to, I don't know, I just knew that they had an album coming out on Cracker Barrel, and they probably had their album already done. And he's like, well, I think we should record this and put this out. So that's how, Dolly was doing a lot of the bluegrass stuff back then. And so whoever heard it, and they're like, yeah, you need to cut this. And it ended up being a big song for them. You just never know.
And my other question, in regards to that, what's your, just briefly, because I've kind of forgot to touch on it, but vocally, what's your journey kind of been like? Were you always singing as a kid? Or is that something where you started writing, you did a demo, and then you're like, everyone's like, hey, you're awesome at that?
Well, singing definitely came later in my life. Well, I started fiddling at 3, so.
Yeah. So at 7, she started singing.
Right. Kind of, yeah.
Zippity doo dah.
I sang in church a lot. The church I went to had these huge productions, and it was kind of a mega church. So there was cameras and an orchestra and all
like
these
Righteous
things.
Gemstones. Have you seen that?
I know, but
on HBO?
I've heard I need to watch that.
If you grew up in mega church like I did,
yeah.
yes, ma'am, you must watch it.
Okay. So I guess from an early age, I remember those nerves hit me like at church when the lights are down and the cameras are on you, and I would have these speaking parts and singing parts. My earliest memories of singing was in church, and then I would be on like youth group praise team and things like that. And then I just kind of did that on the side. Like I remember learning I just always liked to sing old country songs, just really simple old country songs. And then I would play at steel guitar conventions, and they would have me sing a song here or there, and then bluegrass festivals. And so, yeah. And then when I started doing demos and stuff, a part of me, I think, wanted to be an artist. When I started leaning into my songwriting, I was like, well, I like to sing this song. Maybe I want to be an artist. And then I'm like, ugh, there's a lot that comes with that. Mm-hmm. And part of me with the artist struggle. There is a time that I don't know, probably 10, 12 years ago, that I was like really trying to do the artist thing. And I was doing some showcases and I put out an album but the one complaint when people came to my showcase was, you do too many different styles of music. I was like, is that bad? And this is before my whole session career really took off. And I was like, well, I guess that's really just the session part of me. I have to be kind of a chameleon. And that's, which served me well in the session world. But yeah, I mean, and fast forward to now, I mean, I have a new bluegrass band and I'm getting to dig back into these songs that I wrote over 10 years ago and stuff that fits this band.
So your new band, the Woodbox Heroes, is a continuation of your individual artistry endeavor, right?
Yeah. And I think what I struggled with, the idea of being an artist 12 years ago was like, part of me is the fiddle. Like, and if I'm having to do all the singing, I ain't getting to play fiddle. Mm-hmm. So I always could see myself in this band scenario, but I just didn't know where that fit in my life. And fast forward to now, and it's here. Mm-hmm. And I could not be more excited. So Josh Martin is he and I are splitting the lead singing duties, but it's so fun for me because we get to do a lot of those interwoven vocal kind of things, and I get to fiddle as much as I'm singing, and the musicianship is insane. Barry Bells is on bass.
Love the first single.
Oh, thank you.
By the way,
thank you.
Yeah, and there's not really there. You can count on one hand how many fiddle artists, front people there are. Mm-hmm. Who's it, like CDB and Jethro Tull? Or what did he play, flute or something? I'm trying to think of.
I remember Clinton Gregory back in the day. That was one that was, I remember, on my radar. Jana J, way back in the day. No, she was married to Buck Owens, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. And she was on Hee Haw. Yeah. But the musician part of me is like, half of my love is just getting to back up somebody. So that's hard to do when you're the artist.
Yeah. You just got to have that thing in your hands, don't you?
Yeah.
You'd probably be like, you wouldn't be nervous at all right now if you just had it right, just sitting right here on your chin, just holding your shoulder.
It's like Linus's blanket.
Yeah. That's what Brent said. He said, he's like, the thing's like my teddy bear.
It is. I mean, it's been in our hands since I was
so dial it back just a little bit. So how long did you trudge through this session community, building your name? And then when did it snowball on its own? There had to have been a song that was like, put you at the top of the food chain.
Yeah. Oh Lord. Well, I guess 10 years-ish ago, I was just playing on little demos and stuff. And I took my session rig on the road. I was getting a lot of work, but it was just little custom projects. But I was like, I dug my heels in. I'm like, I want to do this. And so I was really fast at getting tracks back to people. And so when people would send me a song, I try my best to get it to them within 24 hours. And I knew in the session world, that's kind of part of it. Like the whole thing when I moved to town was if you're on the road, you're not going to get sessions. Like there's this, you kind of look down upon in a way. But that was starting to change because people could take their equipment on the road and just do it on the road. So I would take my stuff and sit in the hotel room and be doing tracks, and get my tracks to people. And then I had been playing with John Pardee, just doing little shows here and there, some on Broadway and stuff around town. I played his showcase, I think the first showcase he did. And I remember playing on his demos. And then when it came time to do the record, I'm trying to think if I played on the very first record. I was just always kind of in that scene. Like I would see John and then I wouldn't see him for a little bit. But anyway, when he started working with Bart Butler, they called me again to play on his stuff. And that's kind of when his music started to take off. And they kept leaning in to fiddle and steel when everybody else was not. I remember playing on some sessions then, and they're like, we want fiddle, but we don't really want to like know it's in there. And I'm like, okay. So it was a lot of just long notes in the choruses and no intros, no solos.
Yet. Essentially, you started becoming one of the main fiddle players to be called.
Yeah.
And I think that has to do, you said if you're on the road, you're leaving behind the session world. If you're in the session world, you're leaving behind the road.
Yeah.
And you found a way. You said, I'm going to stay on top of all this. I'm going to not let my name be forgotten in any of these circles. That work ethic, I'm telling you, tying it back to the early days.
Yeah.
You saw like a hole in the opportunity there, and you're like, this is how you stay on top, and I'm going to do it.
Yeah. You work so dadgum hard to get to this step and this step, and it's like, and I want to see my dreams come true, and I do set goals. I do, and I still set goals for myself. And I think it's good. Like it keeps you striving for the next thing. So yeah, and I still do that. Like I realize now, like my workload is a lot more, and I sometimes beat myself up because I want to get everyone their tracks tomorrow, but I realize there's not enough time in a day. And I think I'm realizing now the importance of, okay, I'm going to you don't want to burn out early. So I'm realizing, okay, it's okay.
Yeah. You're kind of in a place now where you can breathe a little bit and pursue things you want to do and not.
Yeah. And you realize that people are calling you because they want your sound. I think that's, I always dreamed of that. Like, cause when I would listen to those records, it's like, oh, that's Rob A. Jacobson, that's Brent Mason, that's Paul Franklin. And it was really crazy to me when I see people and they're like, oh, that's you playing on that record, isn't it? I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh, I know. It just sounds like you. I was like, what does that sound like?
I've read interviews before where you've said that you just have a knack for hearing a song and having something in your head to play over it. So is it truly like if I were to show you a song that I wrote right now, if I had my guitar, you'd be like, already I know that's the part that needs to be on it? Usually
there's always a magic the first time you hear it. And so that's the difference in who I was before I moved to Nashville when I did not listen to lyrics. But now, like, lyrics tell me, and I think most of the session guys will tell you, the lyrics will tell you what to play. I know Mike Johnson, and I learned that from him.
Mike Johnson.
And we kind of call ourselves the hillbilly horn section because we do so many parts together. But you definitely want to listen to the lyrics. There's melodies running through my head sometimes. Like I'll just hear the chorus, and when I'm looking at the chart, and I'll just hear a line that's supposed to go in between the lyric, and I'll write it out real quick.
Like the notes you will write out?
Yeah. I have perfect pitch, so it's
you lucky dog.
Blessing and a curse.
I knew it. Freaking perfect pitch.
So I will.
All right, it's been fun with Jenee Fleenor. George Keener, everybody.
Oh man,
y'all are missing out. Well, let's get this back on the rails. What were we talking about?
Well, you should do a part of your show where we do sit down and play.
So that's the idea. Like I didn't want to come out the gate swinging with that, but I'm hoping to kind of do like a how Daryl Hall did that live at Daryl's house.
Heck yeah,
I want to do that like interview and then like mix in the interview portions.
Yeah,
got to get a little more money
that's
first.
Okay. Yes, I hear you.
Sure appreciate folks like y'all being down to talk to the little guy in his Amazon table.
It's great. It's really great.
I appreciate it.
I enjoy listening.
I appreciate it. But on a serious note, do you know what we were talking about before we started laughing so hard? You writing hooks. So you said listening to the lyrics.
Yeah.
Are you saying that like conceptually? Because I would be in the studio and I would be like, can you just make it sound like a pirate falling off of a ship that's like storming at sea, but like gets swallowed up by like the sound of like an octopus? I mean, of course I'm being hyperbolic,
yes.
But yeah, I can truly like creatively personify sounds like that. And then sometimes I'll get in the room and in a studio with somebody and they're like, I know what you're talking. I know the octopus.
Yeah.
I know the plug-in. Yeah.
Well, there's certain thing like a bee, like, like there's certain little, like on I'll Name the Dogs, Blake Shelton song. There's a little line he says about front porch or back porch swing. And I don't know, it just came to me like what that should sound like. So if you listen to that like lyric, that is what that sounds like in my head. So there's definitely things in your tool chest that that I've used different versions of before maybe, and it's like, oh, that licks kind of lends to that. And I think now the challenging part is not repeating myself too. Like you got to sort of reinvent yourself. People want your sound, I guess, but like solos and stuff, you don't want them to all sound the same. So, but it is like, that's what makes me so happy is every day is different creatively. Some days I'm doing string parts, like layering a ton of strings. And then some days is just an old honky tonk song. Mm-hmm. And I just get so much joy in all of that. And for me, like hearing a song for the first time, there's always a magic. It seems like in session players, it's just like we're like a bunch of cats trying to land on our feet. And I just, probably about the fifth take, it starts to get really stale and you start to play really too perfect. So I don't know. I mean, some people like to just play stuff over and over and over. And sometimes we're robots, maybe it feels like. But
don't you want solos to come back in popular music and stuff? Like, I'm thinking like we were talking about Good Time by Alan Jackson.
So I went and listened to so much Alan Jackson after I listened to y'all's podcast. I was like, oh, so good.
I'm telling it, because Alan, the fact that Alan would say, take it around again.
Oh, love it.
And the vibes you get from just the solos on like who's cheating who, like they're ripping and stuff the whole time. Have you gotten to do anything like that of course you have, but for a popular artist where like there's a iconic Jenee Fleenor fiddle solo, like not just a tag?
I'd say She Ain't In It, John Pardee.
I love that song.
Was one. I was just doing like a simple one fiddle part and he's like, no, I want you to put them triple fiddles on there. And I'm like, I don't know if people are ready for this.
Yeah, you sounded like him.
Yeah. He goes, no, you put all that stuff on there. And I was like, okay,
Jenee, get a little dirt on your boots.
Yes. And I was like, man, we are going all in on this thing. And then, man, that was so much fun. And then there's a kind of a signature sound that I do when I stack my fiddles that kind of lends in that R&B kind of stuff. I'd say this Cody Johnson, Build a Fire. I think that's the title. I get to rip pretty hard on that. I've had a lot of people talk about that solo. And it was only one or two takes, I'm pretty sure. It's one of those, I was just at the edge of my seat, just giving it hell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is always fun. I'm trying to think of a few. What?
That phrase. Austin Powers?
Ish, yeah. What? Which saying?
There's a part where he is in the bathroom trying to find this guy who's going to assassinate him. Oh, and the guy comes up, the Irish guy with the Lucky Charms, he starts choking him while Mike Myers is sitting on the toilet. So he stops him and he starts shaking and the toilet starts splashing. And there's a cowboy in the stall beside him. He's like, hang on there, buddy. He's like, hold on to something and give it hell. And
I think I have seen this.
And then the bad guy's name is Number Two.
Oh, right.
Right. Austin Powers is like, who does number two work for?
That's right.
And so I just hearing that give it hell. Come on, get in there and give it hell, Jenee.
Yes.
Put some sauce on that. Put some Cajun sauce on that fiddle now.
I'll say, and I actually cannot say what Bart Butler says all the time to us session musicians in the studio on his records, but it's funny. Mm. And we always know the right, I don't know, extra to give it,
Yeah.
But
do you feel like since you've got the notoriety now and people know your name, they want your sound and stuff. Do you feel like you're treated with a different respect entering professional studio spheres? Or is it like a thing where like now you're established, it's like, hey guys, we got Jenee Fleenor coming in tomorrow, so everybody wear turquoise. She's a turquoise queen.
It's not quite like that. Although a lot of actually I did step in the session the other day and my friend, she's like, I wore this one for you. And which makes me happy. Anytime I see turquoise, it makes me happy. No, there definitely is. I feel like most sessions I'm in, I know who I'm working with, or they know me, which is wild. Every once in a while, when I first started doing sessions, talking about the female thing, every once in a while I'd get that, oh, here's the female. Like, I don't know if you're a female musician, maybe you know what I'm talking about. And I wouldn't say anything. You just get in there and the proof is in the picking.
Yeah.
And so I don't get that much anymore.
That's got to be empowering though. Like if you're getting weird vibes from like a toxic, studio dude, and you go in there and rip it and he's just like, damn, girl.
There was one recently where they're like, I just
like
had
a negative experience recently.
A little bit. I mean,
share at will.
Well, they didn't know me from Adam, which is fine, but wait,
who doesn't know you from Adam?
Well, I don't know, but
does this
which
guy
is
live
fine.
under a box?
No, I don't know.
But
he's like, now this is an ear box. Do you know how to use this? Like, all the little knobs and like that you're going to be a number one. Okay. And this is the click. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, yeah, I didn't even tell him that this is what I do every day of my life. And then when we were done, he's like, oh, you're really good. I'm like, okay, thanks.
Yeah. Hey, you should keep this up. You might have we might have a future in this country music thing.
Yeah.
He wasn't like just like blown away. Like, holy crap, you're the best fiddle player I've ever heard in my life.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I probably left. I just tried to get out of there.
So you played with Terry Clark. You played with Martina McBride. I'm sure the female artists loved having you.
Oh, it was so much fun.
I'm sure you got to develop strong friendships with them.
Yep. I actually just recorded with Terry. She's releasing some of her original hits that I played on the road, which was so fun.
Live versions or like studio re-recordings of the hits?
Yeah. And then having people come in and sing them with her. I won't mention any names, but we can just probably go on Instagram and see if it's out there.
I'm sure we'll.
Yeah. But I love Terry. She's always been so supportive, and I just love her so much. It was so much fun getting to play and sing in her band. Our voices always blended really well together. I actually sang some of my first master recordings actually were singing on her records. I sang some background vocals and then being in Martina's band. Oh my gosh. What an amazing vocalist. And I looked up to her so much. And singing with her above, like I sang the high part above her on those shows. And I just learned when I first was with her, it was the first time I'd played an arena show, like with the, the main act. And my very first tour with her, I had a 3-minute solo all by my lonesome. They're like, okay, you have 3 minutes. The stage is yours, and you will come up this elevator. And then, because she had a costume change where she had to fly this moon all the way across the arena. So that was wild to me. And there's some of those videos on YouTube. But I learned how to interact with the audience. And
I think everybody, like, what's going through your head when you're just like, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. And you're just like, shit, I'm about to be surrounded by 30,000 people.
It was wild. And my very first show with her was in Arkansas, Little Rock. So you talk about nervous.
What was it? Verizon at that time, or was it? I think now it's Simmons Bank Arena.
I have no idea. Was
it at the arena?
Yeah.
I mean, any of those 90s country girls can sell out.
Yeah.
Did you ever play the like Barton Coliseum in Little Rock?
Maybe. I feel like probably.
That's like where they used to do the rodeos and stuff in Little Rock. But you were NWA. Did you ever
Yeah.
did you ever go to Branson as a kid?
Oh yeah.
Like my grandparents, they literally, that's the only place they know about other than Cabot, Arkansas. I'm from Cabot.
Okay.
And they're like, hey, we're going on
going to
vacation. We're going to Branson. And it's like Vegas to them.
Well,
you
Silver
know?
Dollar City was big. You know,
Oh, yeah.
a lot of musicians that I knew played at Silver Dollar City. And as a kid, it's a thousand wonders why I did not just move to Branson.
Mm-hmm.
But for whatever reason, I knew that I wanted to be a session player, and you didn't do that in Branson. Like, I did love to perform, but my heart was set on being a session musician, moving to Nashville.
I think you made the right call.
Yeah, for me it was.
It's such a Branson's such a weird place.
It's
It's so
Soji Tabuchi's theater was
Yeah.
there, and of course everyone was like, you could
Yakov.
go to Branson and be your own Soji.
Yakov Smirnoff.
Yes, all of that.
Yeah.
I
All
do
knobbers.
remember playing a steel guitar convention in the middle of Branson, and Mel Tillis came over to hear me. I was about 15 or 16, and they're like, Mel's coming to hear Jenee. And I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. But that was my childhood, playing at steel guitar conventions.
So you got scooped and swiped up from Terry Clark and Martine and them for a very successful artist by the name of Blake Shelton.
Might have heard of him.
How did Blake come into your life, and when did he say, "Yep, I want that one"?
Well,
For my band, he's such a burglar. That guy, he's onto the Voice,
Right.
stealing people's,
Right.
Stole you.
Well, it actually kind of revolves around the Station Inn again. Seems like I just love that place. So I was still playing the Station Inn a lot, and I remember Blake and his manager Narvel Blackstock coming in and sitting in the back, and this was a while before they ended up calling me, but I guess they saw me in there, and we had some mutual friends, and a few months later they ended up calling and offering me a job. And he had just started on The Voice, and I could kind of see where his career was headed, and it just seemed like the right move. And I toured with him for 10 years. It was awesome. It was a great run. But yeah, we had a lot of fun times together, and those tours, where he brought out all the different country acts.
The guy is hilarious.
Oh yeah.
He is such a riffer.
Yeah.
And like he's just hilarious on talk shows because he doesn't care to be there.
Oh,
It
no.
seems like
Yeah.
he's like, come on, Jimmy Kimmel, say whatever I want to say. Got arrested with Adam Levine.
Right. And being with him on The Voice was like,
Yeah, so that's
It was
crazy.
huge,
Are you
yeah.
the only person ever to get to do that? Fiddle player on The Voice?
well,
You probably have to play a lot of country music for his,
Yeah.
because a lot of people go to just to meet
Yeah.
and impress him.
well, once the band caught wind that, my schedule was his schedule for a long time. So once the band leader figured that out, he's like, oh, we could just have her out here anytime, during the Voice season. And I would play with whatever contestants. It didn't have to be on his team. So I played on just whatever contestant that they thought needed fiddle or something a little special kind of violin vibe.
How often would you have to fly?
So they were taping 2 seasons a year. So usually in the spring and then close to Christmas. And I would kind of just know to block my schedule for about 4 or 5 weeks. Nothing was certain because it's live TV. So I would sometimes get a call on a Friday and have to be there the next day for rehearsal, which was sometimes nerve-wracking, like if you have stuff scheduled already. But, they trusted me. There was a few times that I had to come I would miss rehearsal and just get there on the day before the show or whatever. But, you got wardrobe and makeup and all that stuff is like perfection on that show. So I prefer to be there for the rehearsals. That way you get your ear mix and everything dialed in. But it was, my gosh, what a learning experience, and getting to work with the best of the best and all those, like I'd never been around all the production they have to make in a week. It's like they do a Grammy show in a week.
So they do. You played all the music live?
Oh yeah. Now there's stuff we would pre-tape for a special performance or something, but all the contestant stuff, no, that was very live. And sometimes, we would get off or the singer would start early or come in late, and you just have to go with it. I don't remember any like huge catastrophes. I remember being the most nervous I've ever been on national television, which was, and I would say the whole band would just about say, I don't know, they played a lot more shows than me, but was playing with Ricky Skaggs, Country Boy. We played with Emily Ann Roberts, which I just love her. She's, need to go check her out if you don't know her, but amazing singer. But they did Country Boy, but we did a modulation in the middle so she could sing in the girl key, and that song's ripping. And I remember the producers didn't want the musicians to be up front, like we were all in the back, and they wanted to cut out all these solos and stuff. And it really was the band leader Paul and that said, "Hey, this is bluegrass music, and this is about the musicianship." And he says, "It's not going to be right if you don't put the musicians up front and you do all these solos." I said, "Because you're taking out half the thing." And so they shoved us all up front, and we did all the solos and was scared to death. I remember being so nervous until it was time to perform, and then it was just like, we just got to let it go, and whatever it'll be.
Was the voice a big thing for your like family, knowing like she's made it? Because you're like,
yeah.
Had you been displayed on that scale before?
Oh no, it was huge.
Yeah.
And I remember the first times I played on The Voice, like my phone, it was like a casino. It was, and then I would bring friends. They would need a banjo player or a steel player or whatever. And actually, Mike Johnson went with me.
Mike Johnson.
One time.
Mike Johnson.
And I would get off stage, and my phone just would blow up. It was as live as it could be.
Live is like Saturday Night
Yeah.
Live.
Yeah, and I did that show too. And I don't know if in my mind, Saturday Night Live, I didn't think about it being live. And it was so live. Like,
yeah, it's live as can be.
Yeah.
So another very unique thing about you, I don't know how many people in the world in history could ever say this, but you recorded a country music album and went on tour with none other than Steven Tyler.
Oh, yes.
Who can say I was Steven Tyler's fiddle player? Is there anybody that you've played with and worked with at such a scale that's like has the cultural legacy that guy has?
Oh man, that was
outside of country music.
Right.
I mean, Steven Tyler is a bona fide rock star.
My sister and brother, they grew up listening to Aerosmith, but I did not. So when they called me, or actually Steven called me personally, I left the session, and Steven was in the parking lot, and he's so, just bigger than life. And I'm like, as I was leaving, I said, "Hey, Steven, if you need a fiddle player on the road, just give me a call." I'm like, Blake doesn't tour a whole lot, and who knows, it might work out. And thinking, this guy's never going to call me, like, whatever. He's a rock guy. And he calls me the next week. I'm taking a nap, and there's like it doesn't say his name on there. I'm like, who's calling me? And "Hey, Jenee, it's Steven Tyler. Man, we're doing this tour down in New York City. We're kicking it off. Wondering if you come do rehearsals and do the tour with us." And I'm like, what? And so, yeah, let me see if and it worked out perfect. I was able to make every show for that tour. And yeah, it's definitely not something that I ever thought I would get to do. But I remember on the bus, I was charting out Dream On and Walk This Way and Sweet Emotion. And our bass player would walk by. He was a huge Aerosmith fan. He goes, "I cannot believe you are having to chart these songs out."
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just didn't grow up hearing it. And I am such a huge fan now. I'm like, it's just incredible, fun music. And I would, learn a lot of those Joe Perry lines on the fiddle and play twin parts to him. And then he let me play Orange Blossom Special every night and segue into Train Kept a Rolling All Night Long. And so that was, gosh, really a dream come true.
Yeah, well, it's cool. There's tons of strings in their music
Yeah.
in a lot of the mixes. Like I think did you ever have to play Jaded?
Oh, yeah. That was one of my
That
favorites.
song is amazing.
Yes. And it fits on a fiddle so good. Actually, Marty Fredrickson, I think, was a co-writer, and he was in the band. And man, yeah.
That song is a production masterpiece.
Yeah.
Just the way the guitars and strings layer without it sounding
Yep.
like too much going on. Of course, this is probably the most cliched thing that you get asked, but just people understanding just how huge it is that you're not only the only female ever to win CMA Musician of the Year, but you're the only female to ever be nominated, when you received that honor the first time, that had to have been so huge.
I was going through my phone, I don't know, yesterday, looking for a picture of something, and I ran across some of these text messages of producers and when all that went down the first time. And so many were saying, I think you're the first woman to ever be nominated. And I'm like, I didn't even know. I didn't know what to do with that.
Not only did you get that award and that nomination and kick that door down, but you've had it open and you've set up a little tent inside as you've won it the last 4 years in a row consecutively.
I don't want to overstay my welcome.
Has it sunk in yet though, that you're just like this little girl that mom and dad were making you learn the fiddle and everything, and all the work and just the effort and everything? I mean, when does it really sink in and you're just like, I know it's cliche that you're like, pinch me or whatever.
Yeah.
But you should be proud of yourself. Nobody's done what you've done. It's awesome.
Thanks.
And I'm proud to know you're from my home state, and just to be able to sit here with you. And I hope you're proud of yourself, because we are proud of you.
I think sometimes we do move so fast that you do forget to sit back, and I do have the days that I do this and I look on my mantle. I'm like, God, this is incredible. Like, and I do give all the glory to God. So I think it's good to have those days where you sit back and just really take it in. And but we work so hard, and I think a lot of times you just get you just push yourself so hard in this industry. But this year was really the year I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna take this in and like
I'm gonna breathe.
Yes, it's important. And I really want to focus on inspiring some young girls out there and pouring into their lives and showing that their dreams are possible, whatever that may be. And maybe it's not music, but of course those little girl fiddle players out there, my heart just lights up for them. And I think that's so important that we invest in the young people coming up, because I think if it wasn't for my parents, if it wasn't for, gosh, I have a long list of people that invested in my life, that are still investing in my life. And like I said, there's still dreams that I have for myself. I just want to pay it forward.
And now you're in a position to do that. On the broad scale, of course, we know like the steel guitar and the fiddle, these are dying art forms in the country that we live in. And so you're winning these awards. You're beating out those, those lackluster guitar guys and chicken pickers. Freaking.
We could get kicked out here.
But scoot over to those guys. But yeah, there are girls watching you, and there are girls looking up to you, and that and anything that you do, to keep the fiddle art form alive and keep you could revolutionize people's interest in that. I'm proud to have had a conversation with you, and I really appreciate your time today. And I'm sorry for making you tear up.
That's okay.
But I had to level that for us cracking up for 5 minutes about that scene from Austin Powers.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen,
oh my gosh, I can't believe people are going to know about this.
Jenee Fleenor. No, Jenee, you are a light in the world. Thanks. And you have done so much for country music and for the state of Arkansas. There's not a lot that comes out and makes it out.
We
got Glenn Campbell and Cash.
Oh, we have a good many.
Yeah,
there.
we got a good few. But thank you for your time today. And I wish you luck in continuing to conquer your goals. I don't know how you have any left.
Oh well, I do.
You're just making stuff up. You're like,
no.
I want to play on a SpaceX rocket for Elon in Mars.
Okay, let's do that.
Jenee Fleenor, everybody. We'll see you next time on the Payton Collier podcast.